Many women globally endure painful sex. Think of all the women with terrible birth traumas in countries where they don't have high quality maternal care, and they continue to have sex in tremendous pain. Women in this country too, many of them have vulvar diseases that constrict the opening, or they've had radiation for cancer where the vaginal tissue is stiff, almost like concrete, and they're enduring very painful sex because, again, they feel they must, or they feel like sex is part of what's defining them as a proper wife or partner.
Hello and welcome. Today I have Dr. Maria Sophocles. Dr. Maria is part of the Women's Healthcare of Princeton, a progressive gynecology practice. She's been a visiting professor and NIH researcher in Switzerland, a board certified OBGYN and Menopause Society certified practitioner. She has pioneered innovative treatments, including CO2 laser therapy for vaginal atrophy. She serves as CMO of EMBR Labs, Director of Women's Health Services for Curia Health, and in her spare time is an advocate for women's health policy. Dr. Sophocles is also an author. We look forward to her book coming out next year, a frequent media contributor, and her TED Talk, What Happens to Sex in Midlife, has garnered over 1.2 million views in total. Looking forward to your book, and I will definitely have a link to the TED Talk. Welcome, Dr. Sophocles.
Thank you, Karen. So great to be here.
All right, I'm going to start actually with a couple of excerpts from your TED Talk to get this started. So these are some of the quotes. Women living in the ring of fire, having mercy sex to please, to serve, to not impede sex that a man is entitled to. Let's unpack that. And I know there were two different quotes from two different parts of the talk.
They're all giving us the same image, right, of a woman. And believe me, this can be female couples too, but I think heterosexual couples identify very much with the concept of, I don't really feel like doing this, but I kind of have to do it because he has needs. Men have needs. I've had patients tell me, oh, my husband's Italian. You know what that means. My husband's Latino. You know what that expects, what he expects. There's so much socioculturally ingrained in the scripts and the roles that especially heterosexual women bring into the bedroom and that men bring into the bedroom. And this was what prompted me to coin this term, the bedroom gap, and what this book will eventually be called. But the what's there that I know so many women can relate to is this feeling of, I kind of have to do this. And by this, they mean I kind of have to have sex. And by sex, they mean I kind of have to have penis and vagina sex because his orgasm is sort of the objective of that encounter. And I love the idea of disrupting that idea, of telling women, you get to design what sex looks like for you. First of all, you don't have to want to have sex at all. I hope you do. I want you to. We know that staying sexually active in midlife and later makes us healthier, physically healthier, and emotionally healthier. We know that it contributes to better relationships. We know that it lowers blood pressure, decreases depression, and is a contributor to longevity. Yippee! All that's great news. But I also think it's really important, and I know you believe this too, that women have a right to not just sex and sexual pleasure, for sure, they have that, but a right to define sex for themselves. And if sex for you means my pleasure comes only from oral sex, then I hope that you and I and others like us, Karen, can help women to say, to speak up and to say to their partner, you know what I really loved last night or last week was when we did this. I'd love to do more of that. As opposed to this sort of mechanistic, it's Friday night at 10 o'clock. I guess there's going to be missionary position sex tonight, and it becomes a chore. It just becomes a duty. And I love the idea of turning that narrative on its head a little bit. So that's where that came from.
I actually had heard a friend a couple of years ago coin the term husband sex.
Okay, right.
So
That's
it's
perfect, right?
kind
I
of the
think we all,
same. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not to crap on marriage as an institution, and it's not even to crap on a male-female relationship. Um, but it's about the fact that sometimes, especially in long-term relationships slash marriages, there comes this sort of feeling of expectation or wifely duty. And my God, there's enough of that, dishes and cleaning and kids and whatever your version of it is. And I think it's not healthy for relationships. I mean, Esther Perel, the famous psychologist, talks a lot about how hard it is to be everything for your partner, to be the person that does the dishes and the person that's reliable and responsible and goes to church or synagogue or whatever, and yet is still in the bedroom super spontaneous and inventive and creative and spicy and always up for something. And how women struggle to be both of those things at the same time. And this is why sometimes relationships outside the marriage either happen consensually or more commonly happen without consent because one partner is looking for something they're not getting in the bedroom. And so, how great would it be if within the confines of our long-term relationship with all those wonderful benefits, we could find some novelty, some excitement, some joy, some individuality.
Definitely. We're totally aligned in our missions and how we feel. Um, when I started sort of learning about all of this, I had gone to a practice because I had my own issues with anorgasmia. I talk about it a lot in my podcast, and I went to see Dr. Batsheva Marcus. I don't know if you know her, and she came and she
Mhm.
spoke at a dinner, and I had about 20 women around the table, and she talked about what she had done her thesis on. She talked about pain with sex, which that's where I'm going with this, and vibrators and all that. And I happened to know a couple of the women in the room who had terrible pain with sex. And I was like so excited to have them there. And they got the information and she talked about it and all the things that could be done. And this was a while back. So I don't know that we were talking quite about menopause at this time, but neither of them ever did anything with the information. It was like,
Mm.
and I will say these were women who were married to men who were very accommodating and actually really didn't want to have sex with them because they were in pain, as opposed to a man who feels obliged and woman's afraid to say anything. And I'm curious, have you seen that? And how do we get women to say, like, it's okay to want to have sex and to want to get rid of the pain so that you can have sex?
Right. I mean, when you and I spoke earlier about some of these basic sexual rights that we feel should be there, I mean, the right to comfortable sex is one of them. To me, that's like right to free speech. That like, why are we even listing this? That should be a given. But many women globally endure painful sex. Think of all the women with terrible birth traumas in countries where they don't have high quality maternal care, and they continue to have sex in tremendous pain. Women in this country too, many of them have vulvar diseases that constrict the opening, or they've had radiation for cancer where the vaginal tissue is stiff, almost like concrete, and they're enduring very painful sex because again, they feel they must, or they feel like sex is part of what's defining them as a proper wife or partner. Um, I think pain with sex is something that is not universally fixable. There are some people that are very, very severe problems. I see extremely severe cases in my practice. So there are some people that I treat and I tell them, look, I am not confident we can get you from D minus to A, but I'll do my darndest. But most women in 3 months can be really, their pain can be addressed for the most part. And that's because the most common form of painful sex for women in midlife, anyway, is just due to vaginal atrophy for lack of estrogen. So we either have them use lubricants or vaginal moisturizers or vaginal estrogen or all of the above. We combine that with, say, using dilators, which are like vibrators that don't vibrate, or pelvic floor physical therapy. I mean, there's a whole hour's worth of learning I'm trying to cram into 20 seconds. But for most women, we can improve the sexual pain. Some women, of course, have pain from internal disease processes like endometriosis. That's trickier. Some women have what we call vulvodynia, just extreme pain, just even from sitting or touching the vulva. Though some of those women, it's harder to treat. So it depends on the cause of the pain, and a good gynecologist who really understands pelvic and sexual pain can help you find the cause, and then from there follow the recipe and try to fix it. But yeah, let's hope that anyone with sexual pain has the wherewithal to go seek help for it.
I think that is part of it. Even when I had my issues and I had to tell my gynecologist, because I had just gotten divorced and I started dating someone and we were having all this wild sex and I'm having this anorgasmic issue and I'm like, what is
Oh,
going on? And I needed to have that conversation with my doctor, who was wonderful to me and on so many levels. She delivered my daughter and has grown with me for 30 years and she's fantastic. But I still had this like apprehension about talking
mhm.
to her about it. So let's talk about communication, because you mentioned you also have you work not only in the medical side of it, but also in the emotional and therapeutic mental health side of it. How do I, here I am and I'm having all these issues and I want to talk one to my doctor about it. How do I broach the subject that I never talked, even though she's delivered my babies, we never really talked about sex. And two, to my partner to say, I love you and, or I don't love you.
But I have
but
to
I,
talk about
and
this.
I have
Yeah.
to talk about this.
These are two really challenging conversations for many, many women. And it always blows me away that you can spend 30 years with a doctor and have gone through cancer or infertility or babies or some of the most mind-blowingly intense experiences of your life with a doctor like that. And yet, not only is it awkward for you to broach the subject, most doctors don't want you to broach the subject because, number one, they're not trained to talk about it. Number two, they bring their own discomfort about the subject with them. That baggage comes right into the exam room with them. And number three, medical schools do not prioritize teaching clinicians about how to talk about sex or even to understand sex. When you really look at medical education, it's woefully deficient about menopause and about sex. So, especially sex and menopause, forget it. But even just painful sex, most doctors really just hope you won't talk about it. That's such a bummer, right? Because you feel like you should be able to talk to them about anything. So, how do you communicate with a clinician? Okay, whether they're new to you or not. And I think the first thing is to find out if that clinician is going to be able to help you. And I think there's nothing wrong. Look, we interview people to have a psychiatrist, a lawyer, even a hairdresser. We sometimes say, okay, I'll let you cut my hair, but if you don't like that haircut, you go somewhere else. And I think it's okay in this case. You can still go to that doctor for your pap smear or your blood pressure or whatever you're going to them for. But if that doctor is not comfortable and you sense a discomfort and awkwardness, or they come clean and say, this isn't something I help people with, please go to find someone else and I can help you find that person. Again, you can keep your doctor for other basic things. But what you could ask, like, let's role play right now, Karen. Let's say I'm the patient, you're my doctor, and I can come and just say, hey, Dr. Bigman, before we start, I know I'm here about my pap smear and mammogram, but I have a really specific issue. It's really hard to talk about. So I'm going to just kind of put it right out there. And I want to understand if you feel this is something we could pursue together, right? I think that's a nice way of not insulting anybody, but it's like saying, hey, hairdresser, I really want an updo for my wedding, and I want to know if you do those. Um, what I'm really struggling with is that sex is painful for me, or that I've never really had an orgasm, or I had desire in my 30s and now I don't, or I'm 25 and I want to have enjoyable sex, but I find it's always stressful. Or I was touched inappropriately by my uncle, and I think this might be preventing me from really being able to enjoy sex. I kind of dread it. I mean, whichever of those 10 opener lines applies to you. And you can look in the mirror and practice it before you go to your doctor. Just say, you have to hear yourself say it out loud.
Yeah.
What do you think about that for how to
I
talk
think
to a
that's great
doctor?
advice. And I think that a self-aware doctor will say, that I can help you address the medical issues, but as far as anything else, you might want to go see someone who specializes in sexual medicine.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so let's say they say that. So then they may not know this, but I'll give you guys this hack, which is you can go to AASECT, ASECT.org, American Association of Sex Educators and Certified Therapists. And these are people, it's not the only people, but this is going to be by, according to zip code, a way you can find someone who's gotten certified in sex therapy. And does it mean, many people say, oh, I don't need that. I'm not like a sexual deviant or something. It's like, of
Right.
course not. That's like saying you only need a psychiatrist if you're suicidal. No way. You can go to a psychiatrist for many things, and you can go to a sex therapist just to discuss the five things I just mentioned are all very worthwhile. So you have to get rid of the shame and the stigma of that. But remember, be prepared for many, many physicians to say, that's really out of my wheelhouse. I just really don't feel comfortable. It could be that they're uncomfortable because of their own family or personal history. It could be that their medical education just didn't include anything like that. So hopefully they're honest with you, and that's where that goes. As far as communicating with your partner, that's also incredible, right? That you could spend 10, 20, 30 years with someone discussing births of children and college tuition and taxes and politics and your mother-in-law and everything in between. But many couples have never really had a sexual checking in with each other. They literally don't. It's amazing to me, but they don't. So I do recommend, by the way, that people do that regularly, meaning once a year or quarterly or monthly or whatever rhythm is right for your relationship. If you've never done it, here's how you might want to begin or broach it. I like to tell people do it on a walk because you're facing forward. So just like people are comfy on a therapist's couch because they're just staring up at the ceiling or whatever, you're looking forward, your partner, and you can't really see each other's like eyeball rolls or what are you talking about? You're less likely to get defensive. You're more likely to listen, and you want to keep the tone of the conversation positive and supportive. And if your partner reacts in a defensive way, you take the high road and you keep it positive. You don't say, well, you start with something positive, like, what I loved about when we made love last week was whatever, the fact that we took our time, the fact that we kept our phones out of the bedroom could be something that honestly you think hinders things. And it could be an entree into communication about sex. So, whatever way is easy for you to begin the conversation is how you do it. And then that way, the next time you bring it up, where you might actually have an ask, like, you know what I'd love? I'd love to actually intentionally not have penetration, just cuddle and play and see where it goes. It won't feel so out of left field. So I think we say in the biz, communication is lubrication. There is kind of a turn on to anybody knowing that their partner's actively thinking about sex and sex with them. Men get turned on by this, women get turned on by this in their own ways. And so I think communication, if you can, it's all about starting, right?
Right.
It's like getting on stage. So many people have stage fright or fear of public speaking. They actually have a lot of wonderful things to say, and they're not even bad speakers. But it's the fear of actually having to go from the out off stage to
Yeah.
walking on stage that's just unbearable for most people. Once they're there, it's good. And I think most people, once they're talking about it, as long as they don't get defensive or measuring, well, I did that last time and you didn't do that. Nope, you're going to lose that. Keep it positive, keep it constructive, keep it complimentary. And most partners are kind of pumped up that you're kind of interested in this.
That's great. Great advice. And I echo it. I always say, or in the car, I guess being from New
Hmm.
York City, we're
Same
not
thing.
that much, but yeah, no. And I actually will have, I'm coming out with by the time this airs, I will have launched my course, and there's a whole module on communication and ways that you can communicate with your partner. Because I used to be a divorce coach, and I always said that if you can talk about sex and you can talk about money, you probably will have success in your relationship, because those are just such hard conversations to have. Let's pause for just a moment, because if you are loving this episode, I've got something special for you in honor of my 100th episode. and my birthday month, I have launched a sex education masterclass and I'm offering 30% off just this month. 6 jam-packed modules, home play exercise, whether you're solo, whether you're partnered. I've got guest lecturers talking about sex toys and dating. It is a ton of fun and it is available at my website, taboo2truth.com. Now, let's get back to the episode. Great advice and for talking to doctors as well. And I think that one would hope that as the conversation about, certainly for middle-aged women, that as the conversation around menopause gets louder, perhaps the conversations around the consequences, sexual consequences of menopause will get a little bit louder as well.
I hope so. I mean, I think my TED Talk was the first and I think the only TED Talk to talk about sex in midlife and what happens. And so a lot of people are finding it really helpful. I mean, even sex ed classes and psychology courses, and people are starting to use it as a teaching tool, as just a basic to understand the very basics of what happens to us sexually in midlife as women genitally, and how relationship wrecking it can be if you disregard it or don't let your partner know about it. I mean, it's one thing to have it and even understand it yourself, but if you're suffering through mercy sex, like we said, or duty sex, and your partner doesn't know, your partner's going to think either you're broken, something's wrong with you, or maybe you don't care, maybe you don't love me anymore. And all of those are not true. Not even the broken part. It's just not true. It's aging. It's a very common effective aging, and it's very improvable and fixable. Not, I mean, with communication and lube, of course, but also, I mean, vaginal estrogen, in my opinion, we should probably mail it like to every 50-year-old woman in America gratis and say, here's a lifetime supply. Don't
Yep.
ask any questions. It's safe. Just use it. I mean, it's so darn safe. And that's for breast cancer survivors or thrivers. That's for nobody who's ever had any breast cancer. I mean, it's really hard to find a woman that it's not safe for. It's not systemic, really. So it's it's harder to find someone who couldn't use it. Maybe someone who's allergic to one of the, I don't know, cream and the preservatives or something like that. But it's super rare. So given that pretty much it benefits everyone and it benefits you forever and it works in a few months,
Yeah.
it's a pretty easy, fix for a lot of this. So
It's interesting. I was mentioning that I hosted an event last night and I was
yeah,
about menopause, and there was are people there that always say, I have no menopause symptoms, so I'm fine. And then I say, well, do you have a dry vagina? They don't associate
they don't
that
link
with,
it.
they don't link it
Yeah.
at all. And I'm like,
Yeah, they look
we
at
can
you
put,
like you just saw them naked, right? Like,
yeah.
how did you know? How did you know
Yeah,
that?
right. Am I the only, you mean other people are actually, and that is,
Yeah,
there's such power and community in that, because it's like, oh,
right.
you too, you
Well,
know?
let's talk about those numbers for a second, Karen. There are over 1 billion menopausal women on the globe right now, and
Wow.
we believe that at least half of them have sexual side effects from menopause, probably more like 75%. So let's say conservatively it's only half. That's 500 million women around the world with this who are going, I thought it was just me, or I feel broken. This is a huge number of women that I hope people like you and I can impact, even just a tiny sliver of that. And it could be more like 700 million or 750 million. I mean, it's enormous. So it's worth yelling and screaming about, I think, a bit.
Yeah. And I think it goes to just being able to have a conversation at all about sex and about your body and about being a woman and about natural aging and things that we shy away from. I love how what was it? Batsheva on her Instagram said something that people will come in her office and go like, I have this thing. I'm sure you've never heard it before. Like you think
Yeah.
you've got this like horrible thing that nobody, and everybody's quietly suffering from the same thing.
Oh yeah, I have one little story. I do a lot of guest appearances on Doctor Radio, Sirius XM. It's at NYU. And one day I was doing a thing about vaginal dryness, genitourinary syndrome of menopause, the usual topics I talk about a lot. And callers come in from all over, and we take their calls and answer their questions, and I say goodbye to the host, and that's that. Um, And often the phone rings at my office a lot the next day. Somebody's called because she heard on the radio and she wants to be a patient. Well, this was a little different. I go to the office the next day, and it was about 20 hours after I had done the radio program. And there's a couple sitting in the waiting room. And I mean, they look like they're out of a Western, like jeans, big, huge belt buckle, denim shirt. I mean, I think in my mind, the guy had like a twig of hay hanging out of his mouth, but he didn't really. It was just they were dressed the part, right? And they were lovely. They were an attractive couple. Like maybe they looked like mid-40s or something. Anyway, I thought it's funny. They don't look like the typical Princeton, New Jersey couple, but whatever. I go in and my office says, "Hey, these people were standing here outside the door when we came to the office at 7:30 in the morning. We let them in and they said they'll be patient, but they're going to wait there till they know you don't have any appointments for months and months. They'll just wait till you're finished to talk to you." And I just thought, I don't want them sitting here at 5 o'clock. That's going to be weird. So I took them into my office right away, into the exam room, and the woman's like looking down at the floor. She's just like embarrassed. She looks with her body posture like she's a leper or something, just like she's the worst. And the man says, "We're here because we heard you on that radio show yesterday. And we just got right in the car, and started driving from, I forget, Iowa or something like that,
Wow.
like somewhere crazy. Like they just got in the car, Kansas maybe, and they just didn't stop driving till they got there." And again, she's thinking she's the only woman on the planet with this. They're thinking I'm the only person they've ever heard talk about it. So I'm the only person that could possibly fix it, which of course isn't true. But this was several years ago before menopause was out and about. And I said, "Well, what seems to be the problem?" And I was looking at her and she didn't answer. And he said, "Well, I think she's broken or something down there. I think she's just broken down there." And of course, she had vaginal atrophy and it was pretty easy to fix. And there was a happy ending to the story. But the fact that this couple would just get in the car and drive through the night to get there is crazy, right? Crazy meaning we have not done justice to women's health. And this is a whole other topic, right? Of like, where's the research? Where's the publicity? Where's the marketing? Why is it that there's Viagra at every street corner? You
Right.
can buy Viagra as easy as you can buy toilet paper, but that nobody knows about this. Like, why are women suffering silently? And that's in my book, the fact that Viagra has sort of widened this bedroom gap. The fact that men and women have different abilities in midlife. As men's sexual function fails them in terms of erectile dysfunction, they have a great option. It's reliable, it works, it's pretty safe, pretty cheap. You can get it cheap. You can get it in every country on the planet, but it makes us feel more broken when
Right.
our 62-year-old partner can have a 4-hour erection.
Right, right.
Um,
Not even like discussing the fact that it takes women longer to get aroused anyway, but we don't have time to go into
No, but
this.
that's the point is
Yeah,
he's now
yeah.
got 4-hour
Yep.
erection and you're like struggling to get wet because you have fewer blood vessels than you used to. So that's what I mean by widening that bedroom gap, which, we'll talk about another time, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
gets me all fired up. So
That might be a topic for our next
yeah,
podcast.
for sure, for sure.
And so I know you're a huge advocate for bringing all this information out there. And let's talk a little bit about the project you're working on now, the movie that you're trying, or that you are actually instrumental in
Yeah.
helping create.
Yeah, so this is a documentary film called Hot with an exclamation point, and it's kind of a, a movie about sex in midlife and female sexuality and what kind of messages the world makes women have around sexuality and how that it is exciting and how the fact that women are living longer and staying vibrant longer and winning Academy Awards older and getting great starring roles as older women is wonderful. But at the same time, many women are left behind, feeling like, again, their husband's on Viagra and they're broken. So it's going to look through a bunch of lenses. What about cancer survivors? What about, um, you know, women with issues, and so it's called Hot, and we are just starting filming, and it's almost a film version of the Bedroom Gap book and of my TED Talk, really. So it's all that same topic that I know is near and dear to your heart too, Karen. And so that'll be out, and I certainly, if you're listening and you have a fun, interesting story about your own sexual journey, you can reach out to Karen Bigman, I think, right? Because I think you
Oh,
and I are going to stay in
absolutely.
touch. I have this funny
Absolutely.
feeling.
Yes, yes,
So,
definitely.
Dr. Bigman in the house, and I'm just teasing you, but
That's
I
okay.
really know you're such an advocate and that you want these stories to find their way, especially
Yes,
on screen, where they can then be felt and heard by so many other women. It's a way for you and I to amplify this message and for these women to feel they're not alone, they're not broken, and that, and to kind of find somehow some joy and fun in all this, that that there's help, and between communication and lubrication and all the other things you and I suggest, that there is sunshine at the end of this for a lot of people.
yes, it's great. And I will put a link to apply to be on that in that movie, I guess, or I guess you're
Yeah,
casting to be cast in the movie. That was
yeah, you're
that's the
a
word.
a casting
A
call of
cast call. Yes,
sorts.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You can tell you and I are actually not in the film
I know,
industry.
right? In the biz.
What do they call it? What do they call that again?
That thing where
Oh,
they get
well.
people to actually be in the movie.
That's right. That's right. Well, when we win our Oscars, we'll high five and remember this moment that we didn't even remember
Exactly.
the
From your
casting
mouth
call.
to God's ears, as my
That's
late
right.
mom would say.
That's right. That's right.
Dr. Sophocles, I'm just going to wrap this up with the question I ask all my guests. I didn't warn you about this one, although you might have heard it at Ishwish at the conference that we met at. And given I kind of have a sense of it from just our conversation, but what is your personal definition of sex?
My personal definition of sex is um, joyful, curious, and fun relationship enhancing. And I leave it general because I like it to be about whatever version of sex appeals to you, whether it's a long-term partner or a short-term way for you to have pleasure. I mean, I just think sex is such a universal thing. So, but I think curiosity and joy are two attributes or aspects of sex that I think personally, for me, have made it a fun part of my life. And I'm so lucky that I have a partner that also feels that way. Um, but even if you don't have a partner, I think if you can bring joy, I'd say joy, humor, and curiosity, because I do think we have to be able to laugh at ourselves a little and laugh at our imperfections and not take it all too seriously, or else we bring shame and insecurity into the bedroom, and bedroom is no place for either of those things.
That's right. That's great. Wonderful, wonderful definition. And so great talking to you. I look forward to many more
Me
conversations. We could have
too.
gone on for
I
hours.
know. I
Thank you so
know.
much. I so appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Let's make that happen. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Great to see you.